My wife did not come back from a business trip, leaving me and the children without even saying goodbye. The moment my wife told me she wasn't coming back was not over a tear-filled call, not even in person, but through a text message at 11:43 p.m. I cheated on you. I'm staying with him. I'm sorry. That was it. No explanation, no warning, no goodbye. Just a few lines that ripped through my chest and left me gasping for air. If you told me 3 months ago that Lisa would leave me like this, I wouldn't have believed you. We weren't perfect, but we were surviving. Our biggest hurdle came when I fell seriously ill last year, a diagnosis that drained our savings and left me unable to work for months. It started with fatigue, then chest pains that wouldn't go away. The hospital stays, the surgeries, the medications, they devoured everything we had. Lisa stood by me through it, at least I thought she did. When the medical bills piled up and debt collectors started calling, it was her idea to take the business trip. Her company had offered her a 2-month project overseas with a generous bonus. Don't think twice, I told her. We need this money. I remember holding her close before she left, whispering that we'd get through this together. She kissed me and promised she'd call every night. I'm doing this for us, she said. For the kids. And for the first month, everything was fine. She FaceTimed with the kids, sent pictures of her hotel room, and texted me sweet nothings before bed. I never thought I had a reason to worry, but in hindsight there were signs. Subtle shifts. Her calls became shorter, her texts less frequent. Busy day was her go-to excuse, and I didn't push her. I knew she had a lot on her plate, and I didn't want to add to her stress. Looking back now, I hate myself for not noticing sooner. Even when Lisa started acting distant, I didn't let myself believe something was wrong. I had too much going on at home. My days were a blur of early mornings, school drop-offs, cooking dinner, and endless laundry. I barely had time to sit down, let alone entertain the thought that my wife might be slipping away from me. Her texts had changed, sure. Gone were the long, detailed messages about her day. Instead, I got brief responses: busy, exhausted, talk tomorrow. But I told myself it was because she was working long hours. I knew how demanding corporate trips could be, and I didn't want to add to her stress by pushing her for more. At night, I'd lie in bed scrolling through our old conversations, looking for some sign of when things started to change. A month ago, she was telling me how much she missed home, how she couldn't wait to be back in my arms. Now, it felt like I was texting a stranger. One night, I tried to bring it up. Hey, I typed. Are you okay? You seem distant lately. I waited for her response, watching the little typing indicator flicker on and off before her reply finally came through: just tired. Don't overthink it. I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. So, I put my phone down and tried to convince myself that everything was fine. The next morning, I packed the kids' lunches, dropped them off at school, and went about my day as usual. But that sinking feeling in my chest didn't go away. It gnawed at me, a quiet warning that something wasn't right. Still, I didn't say anything. I told myself I was being paranoid, that once she came home, everything would go back to the way it was. Then, that night, I sent her a text: just finished dinner with the kids. We miss you. It was the kind of message I'd sent dozens of times before. But this time, her reply wasn't what I expected. I cheated on you. I'm staying with him. I'm sorry. My breath hitched. I stared at the screen, rereading the words as if they might change. They didn't. I called her immediately, my hands shaking. No answer. I called again. Nothing. I sat on the edge of the bed, my phone still clutched in my hand, unable to move. Lisa, the woman I had built a life with, had just blown it apart with a few lines of text, and I never even saw it coming. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying her words over and over, like a nightmare stuck on repeat. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her text: I cheated on you. I'm staying with him. The kids were asleep upstairs, and I had no idea how I was going to face them in the morning. By dawn, I couldn't take it anymore. My hands trembled as I dialed her number again, praying she would pick up this time. When she did, her voice was distant, like she had already checked out of the conversation before it began. Lisa, I said, my voice cracking. Please, just tell me what's going on. Why are you doing this? She sighed, and the sound of it nearly broke me. I didn't want to tell you like this, she said softly. But it's better this way. I've met someone. Her words felt like a punch to the gut. Met someone? I echoed. Lisa, you've only been gone for 2 months. What do you mean you've met someone? How long has this been going on? There was a pause, as if she was deciding how much truth I could handle. Since the beginning of the trip, she admitted. I didn't plan for it to happen, but it did. I pressed the phone harder against my ear, as if that would help me understand. You've been lying to me for 2 months? My voice cracked, and I hated how weak I sounded. Do you even realize what you've done to us? To the kids? I didn't want to hurt you, she whispered. But you did, I shot back. You tore our family apart. She was quiet for a moment before speaking again, her tone detached. His name's Eric. He's a project manager. We're happy together. He's offering me a fresh start, a better life. Those words stung more than anything else she could have said. A better life. As if the life we'd built together, the one we'd fought so hard to maintain through sickness and financial struggles, wasn't good enough for her anymore. What about the kids? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Are they part of this better life you're building? She hesitated. They'll understand eventually. You're a good dad. I know you'll take care of them. Her words were cold, calculated, and they cut me deeper than any knife could. I begged you to come home, I said, tears streaming down my face. I begged you to give us another chance. I'm sorry, she repeated, but it sounded hollow, and then she hung up. Just like that, the woman I had shared a life with was gone, leaving me in a house that suddenly felt too empty to bear. After the call, I sat in the dark, phone still in my hand, staring at nothing. My mind was spinning, trying to make sense of what had just happened. I wanted to scream, punch a wall, anything to release the pressure building in my chest. But I couldn't. The kids were asleep upstairs, and they didn't know their mother had just walked out on them. I don't know how long I sat there, drowning in silence. At some point, the sun started to rise, casting pale light through the window. The house was quiet, but not the peaceful kind of quiet. It was the kind that suffocates you, that reminds you of everything you've lost. Then I heard the creak of footsteps on the stairs. My youngest, Mia, appeared in the doorway, her hair a tangled mess, clutching her favorite stuffed bear. She yawned and rubbed her eyes. Daddy, can we have pancakes today? I forced a smile, swallowing the lump in my throat. Of course, sweetheart. Go wash your hands, and I'll get started. In that moment, I realized I didn't have the luxury of falling apart. I had 2 little lives depending on me, and they couldn't know that their mother had abandoned them. Not yet. I shuffled into the kitchen and grabbed the pancake mix. My hands were shaking as I cracked the eggs and stirred the batter. Mia sat at the table, happily swinging her legs and humming a song, completely unaware of the storm raging inside me. As I flipped the pancakes, my phone buzzed on the counter. I grabbed it, hoping it was Lisa, maybe telling me she had made a mistake and was coming home. But it wasn't her. It was a work notification. Life didn't care that my world had just imploded. Bills still needed to be paid, work emails still needed replies, and the kids still needed to eat. Mia giggled as I accidentally flipped a pancake onto the counter instead of the pan. Daddy, you're so silly. I laughed, but it was hollow. I didn't feel silly. I felt broken. After breakfast, I got the kids dressed and took them to school. On the drive, they talked about their friends and the games they played at recess. I nodded along, forcing myself to respond at the right moments, but my mind was elsewhere. How long could I keep this secret from them? When would I have to sit them down and explain that Mommy wasn't coming home? When I got back home, the silence hit me like a tidal wave. I sat on the couch, staring at the photos on the wall, family vacations, birthday parties, moments that felt like a lifetime ago. I kept waiting for the tears to come, but they didn't. I was too numbed out. I tried calling Lisa again that afternoon. Straight to voicemail. I left a message, my voice cracking as I pleaded with her to think about the kids. They miss you, Lisa. They need you. But she never called back. That night, after the kids went to bed, I sat on the floor of our bedroom with a box of memories, old love letters, photos from our wedding, the first drawing our son ever made of our family. I held a photo of Lisa and me, smiling on our honeymoon, and wondered how we had gotten to this point. I thought about what she said on the phone, about building a better life with Eric. Was that all I was to her, a stepping stone to something better? I wanted to hate her, but I couldn't. Not yet. I was still too broken to feel anything but loss. The next few days passed in a haze. I dropped the kids off at school, worked from home, picked them up, cooked dinner, and tucked them into bed, all while my mind replayed the same questions over and over. Why did she leave? Why wasn't I enough? I barely ate. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lisa's face, heard her voice telling me that she had found someone else. At night, I sat by the window, staring at the empty street, half hoping she'd pull into the driveway and tell me it was all a mistake. But she didn't. Then, 3 days after the call, my phone buzzed with a new message from her. My heart raced as I opened it. But the words on the screen weren't the apology or explanation I had been hoping for. "I think it's best if we figure out custody arrangements through lawyers. I'm willing to let you have primary custody if that's what you want. I just need time to settle things with Eric." That was it. No emotion. No acknowledgement of the damage she'd caused. Just a cold, practical message about dividing up the life we had built together. I sat there, staring at the message, my hands shaking. I wanted to throw the phone across the room, to scream until my lungs gave out. How could she talk about custody like it was some business deal? We weren't dividing assets, we were talking about our children. Our family. I called her immediately, my finger hovering over the phone icon for a second before pressing it. But once again, it went straight to voicemail. I slammed the phone onto the table and paced around the kitchen, my mind spiraling. How could she do this to us? I had supported her through everything, her career, her personal struggles, our financial hardships. And now, when I needed her most, she was gone. I wanted to hate her, but part of me still wanted her to come back. I hated myself for it. That night, after I put the kids to bed, I sat in the dark living room with a glass of water, staring at the ceiling. The walls felt like they were closing in on me. I needed to tell the kids soon. I couldn't keep lying to them, couldn't keep saying, "Mommy will be back soon," when I knew she wouldn't. But how do you tell a child that the person they trust the most has left them behind? How do you explain abandonment without shattering their world? I didn't have the answers. I wasn't ready. But I didn't have a choice. I picked up my phone and stared at her message one last time before turning it off. The silence in the room felt suffocating, but I stayed there, too exhausted to move. Lisa had moved on. And now, I had to figure out how to do the same. I spent the next day rehearsing what I would say to the kids, running through every possible way to soften the blow. But no matter how I framed it in my head, it always came out wrong. There was no way to tell them without breaking their hearts. That evening, after dinner, we sat on the couch, their little legs tucked under them as they watched cartoons. I sat there for a moment, silently memorizing the way they giggled at the TV, their innocence still intact. But I couldn't delay it any longer. I muted the TV, and they both looked up at me, confused. "Daddy, what's wrong?" my son asked, tilting his head. I forced a smile and pulled them closer. "I need to talk to you about something important," I said, my voice barely holding steady. "It's about Mommy." Their faces lit up. "Is she coming home soon?" Mia asked, her eyes wide with hope. My throat tightened, and I looked away for a second to collect myself. "Mommy's not coming home, sweetie," I said softly. She's staying somewhere else for a while." They both blinked, as if they hadn't heard me correctly. "Why?" my son asked, frowning. "Did we do something wrong?" I felt like the air had been knocked out of me. I shook my head quickly. No. You didn't do anything wrong. This isn't your fault." I squeezed their little hands, my voice cracking. "Sometimes grown-ups have problems, and they can't fix them. But I promise, no matter what happens, I'm here. I'll always be here." Mia buried her face in my chest, and I could feel her tears soaking through my shirt. My son sat silently for a moment before whispering, "But why doesn't she want to see us?" I had no answer. I couldn't tell them the truth, that their mother had chosen someone else, that she had abandoned them without a second thought. So, I did the only thing I could. I held them close and let their tears mix with mine. We stayed like that for a long time, the room dark except for the faint glow of the TV screen. I stroked their hair and whispered promises I wasn't sure I could keep, that everything would be okay, that they would be happy again, that they would always have me. Eventually, they fell asleep in my arms. I carried them to bed, one by one, and tucked them in. But when I closed their bedroom doors and returned to the living room, the weight of it all came crashing down on me. I sat on the floor, my back against the couch, and sobbed. It was the kind of crying that shakes your entire body, the kind that comes when you've been holding everything in for too long. I cried for the life we had lost, for the kids who didn't deserve this, and for the man I used to be before all of this tore me apart. When the tears finally stopped, I wiped my face and stared at the empty room. I didn't know how to move forward. But I knew I had to. For them.